The LG Procast, the podcast, is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views or opinions expressed by the podcast hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the official position of LG. For the latest and most accurate information about LG products, please consult relevant product manuals and related documentation. The information provided in this podcast episode is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we make no representation or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, or suitability of the information for any specific application in the following discussion. LG and those posting or otherwise providing information, content, or material are not responsible or liable for any consequences relating directly or indirectly to any action or inaction you take based on the information, content, or other material on the podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the LG Procast. I'm glad to have you here. I am Phillip Kriegbaum.
And I'm Frisenda. We're excited because today's topic will be a point of interest for a lot of folks out there, and that is 5 wires and why. Right? As you know, if you started playing with some of this R32 equipment from LG, we have moved our product portfolio over to 5 wire. So 3 for power and 2 for communication. And today's episode of the LG Procast is to talk about that, talk about why, talk about the benefits, talk about specific wiring examples and diagrams, and do all that in 30 minutes or less. So with that being said, Phillip, here we go. Let's have some fun. 5 wire and why.
Yes, sir. So first of all, I want to point out that, and this is a bit of a confusing point, and for that I apologize, but it is what it is. We transitioned almost all of our equipment over to 5 wire. There are a handful of units that are going to remain 4 wire. And those are the single zone wall mount systems, single zone only. So that's the ArcCool Premier and Deluxe. That is the extended pipe, and then the Mega and standard efficiency systems. So if it's a single zone only wall mounted system, it's going to remain 4 wire with the 14.4 that we've always used. So that is on the wall mount side, that's going to be the high efficiency. And then everything else that's not a wall mount is all going to 5 wire. And as Terry mentioned, that is because we had to increase the speed of communication, increase that baud rate. And that way we can sense the leak or potentially, if there is a leak, that the leak sensor can communicate quicker, shut the system down quicker. That's kind of the what and the why.
So listen, there's, with the switch to A2L refrigerants, the good news is it's a daisy chain wiring system. Almost all, if not all, VRF manufacturers have been using a daisy chain wiring system. You're going to have to separate power from communication in the wire bundle, which means you're going to have one set of wires, 14.3 stranded, running from the outdoor unit to the indoor unit. And you're going to have another set of wires, 18 gauge minimum, 2 wire, going from the communication circuit on the outdoor unit to the communication circuit on the indoor unit.
But I do want to mention that everything is still stranded, right? So even though we're 18 gauge, even though we're using 18 gauge communication wire, we're not using 18 gauge solid core thermostat wire. It needs to be stranded communication wire. And it has been best practice in the United States that for the residential level equipment, we do not need shielded cable. If you want to use shielded, great. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're in a situation where you feel like there may be some interference, please feel free to use shielded cable. Just make sure you know how to use it. Don't assume that you know how to hook it up, because I did that a long time ago and thought I knew how to hook up shielded cable. You only take the shield and you hook it to the ground on the outdoor chassis. On the inside, you do not hook it to the ground. If you do that, you make an antenna, opposite of what you're looking to do. So you just tape that off, but it does not get connected to anything except for at the outdoor unit. So that's a little bit about the wire.
Yeah, that's a valid point, because if I'm daisy chain wiring, think about it. Okay, so I've got that shield connected at that outdoor unit. So when I go to my daisy chain to my first indoor unit, if I've got a multi-zone system, right, that shield's now 2 pieces, right? It's twisted together right there. And then it goes to that second indoor unit and stays open on that second or third or last indoor unit. But it does twist together to each unit till the end, and then the end stays open. That's a correctly installed and shielded system.
Yep. So on the outdoor units, I've been looking through wiring diagrams and some other things. We'll take, for example, our 3-ton, which handles up to 4 ports. They gave us 2 terminals for power and 3 terminals for communication. So if we're going to have 4 indoor units, we have to double up somewhere. And what I confirmed with the engineers, it really doesn't matter where. On the power, since there's only 2 terminal blocks, you just double up on both of them for all your indoor units. On the communication side, though, this is what I found kind of interesting and really helpful. We can daisy chain, but we don't have to. So if you want to run a communication wire from the outdoor unit to each indoor unit, just kind of following the line set, we can do that. Or we can daisy chain, or we can do a combination of all of that, actually. So if you want to run a wire for unit number 1 and then daisy chain over to unit number 2 and then run a separate wire to unit number 3 and daisy chain over to unit number 4, you can do that as well. Essentially what he told me is, as long as your A's all get tied together and your B's all get tied together, that system will go out and figure out where everything is located, because we now have to go through a piping address process. We have auto piping, but we also have a manual way to address the systems that's a little bit quicker. Auto piping does it for you, but it takes 15 to 20 minutes because it heats up or cools down each of those indoor coils, senses where the temperature is changing, and then it'll move on to the next one, just like VRF system does. Or we can go through and just give each indoor unit manually an address, which on a smaller system might just be a quicker and easier way to do that. But we wanted to focus on wiring.
Let's make sure we have a very clear understanding here. In that example that Phillip just gave, we have 4 indoor units. Okay. There's only 2 blocks for what he's calling power. Okay. That's the high voltage 208 to 230 volt supply. In the past, remember, we had L1, L2, 3 communication, and 4. And remember, we were communicating a high voltage signal on L2 and a high voltage signal on terminal 3. That's gone away. We're not daisy chaining high voltage L1, L2 from one unit to another. Those are all coming home run back to the outdoor unit. So in Phillip's example, he would, in a 4-port system with 4 indoor units connected, there would be 2 wires on L1, 2 wires on L2, and 2 wires on ground, right? For circuit 1, they are for 2 indoor units. On that second terminal block, there would be 2 on L1, 2 on L2, and 2 on ground, going to each outdoor unit, with the daisy chain and our AB communication circuit being described or being installed as Phillip described earlier.
Yeah, I think really the majority of guys are just going to do it, just run it from the condenser to the indoor unit. So I think in most applications, it's just going to make sense that the power wire and the communication wire come from the condenser straight to your indoor heads. Or if there's a situation where it just makes sense to daisy chain the communication side of it, we can do that. Power, not so much. It has to be done that way.
We want to go back to that PWC educational piece that Phillip and I and some members of our team have been doing for years, right? It's piping, wiring, and charging. The wiring practices still are the same, all right? Stranded cable, no butt joints, no solder joints, no wire ties, no wire nuts. No, it is a connection to connection break-free deal, right? Spade connectors are your friend, right? The yarn and the ring terminals and any work. All that stuff still stays the same, all right? It's still DC communicating equipment, and good wiring practices make a good wiring or a good DC communicating system.
Yep. So yeah, just to remind you, it's 14.3 stranded, and it's minimum gauge. You can always go thicker within reason, and minimum gauge of 18 to It does not have to be shielded, but it does have to be stranded. I know one of the wires that I saw out there that kind of pairs them together, like we were talking about earlier, it uses 16 gauge for the communication. And actually, I had somebody call me and go, "Hey, what about this? It's 16 gauge?" I double checked just to always be sure, but 16 gauge communication is just fine. 18 is the minimum, so that 16 gauge wire will work just fine there.
Yeah, I mean, 16 is a bigger wire than 18 gauge. It's just made, there's a point where these fat fingers and that big wire won't go in that alternative block. So yeah, I mean, and obviously there's a cost savings with using 18 gauge stranded versus a 16
Certainly.
or whatever. So that's the stuff that about this wiring. It's one more connection, 4 versus 5. Just keep your wiring practices clean. Do the stuff that you know is right, right? As far as third-party devices now, right? There's no more worry about, did I do the right wiring circuit because I broke L2 communication? Because now that's nothing more, L1, L2, and ground. That's nothing more than a high voltage signal going from outdoor to indoor now. So now that disconnect doesn't become a problem. I can use something probably less expensive than that. Different benefits arise now from having a power only wire going from outdoor to indoor. So that's going to be beneficial.
Yeah. We used to run the communication signal and the high voltage power on the same piece of wire. And like you mentioned, when you had condensate pumps or disconnects in that line, that could give us communication problems from time to time. So this does clear that up quite a bit. But if you're prepared and you know what you're going to go install, you shouldn't have any problems. Make sure that you know what wire the equipment that you're installing is supposed to have, and make sure that that's the wire that you have with you. You know, we have wonderful distribution partners, but when you go, "Hey, I want this system and I want the wire that goes with it," always double check your line set size and double check your wire type, to make sure that they gave you the right size, the right type of wire. So when you get out on the job, you're not frustrated. So I know some guys carry big long spools, other guys buy it by the job, so just make sure you have the right stuff.
Hey, I can give you, I call it TEF tips, right? Terrence Edward Frisenda, that's me. TEF tips. I can tell you that the new standard one-to-one multi, the standard one-to-one vertical air handler system or multi-pose air handler system, the AB circuit is on the inverter board in the bottom left-hand corner of that inverter board, which is standing right in front of you when you're looking at that outdoor unit with the cover off. That AB circuit's on the bottom left-hand corner of that board. I can tell you it's there now because I searched all over the outdoor unit looking for it on a startup that we were doing for a contractor here locally. And there's a big wire bundle that comes off of that inverter board, and it was behind that, and we couldn't see it until we moved that. So save yourself that 20 minutes of looking where that A and B circuit is. It's on the bottom left-hand corner of that inverter board, which is right in your face when you're standing eye to eye with the outdoor unit. So this is just
something in the way.
Yeah. We just put a big old bundle of wires right in the winter. I don't know if that just moved over there, if it's just the natural way that wire shapes, but you can save yourself some time knowing now where it is.
Yeah. So the more I think through this, and obviously I've had some time to wrap my head around it, I really don't think this is going to be a major deal. I really don't think it's going to be any more difficult than what guys are doing right now. It's just, to me, the only challenge is going to be making sure that you have the right wire for the right piece of equipment on the job. Or if you're prudent, maybe carry a spare of each type on your truck, so that you have what you need when you need it. But beyond that, really, it's business as usual. It's like you said, it's just using good wiring techniques that we've been using for years and years and years. I don't know. To me, there's really not this big mystery. I think the confusion also came around whether or not it needed to be daisy chained. I did hear that one time from a guy putting one in. He goes, "I was told that I had to daisy chain it," and so that caused confusion. And that actually was for him, it was not convenient, but it wasn't impossible because he was only doing a 2-head system and both lines were relatively short. So he went up to the unit number 1 and then came back down towards the condenser and then followed the line set back towards unit number 2, wasted a whole bunch of wire by doing that. But it works, is the point, is that does work because the A's were all tied together and the B's were all tied together. But it wasn't the most efficient way to run the wire, but either way works. And if you look at the board, if you actually look behind the board, we've got 3 A's, 3 B's, and behind it, they're all just tied together. They all go to the exact same spot on the board. They're just giving you extra terminal screws where you can land your wire on it. So
That's great.
really just
Hey, terminal, sorry, Phil. Terminal screws reminds me of something very important that we talked about all around for the last, I don't know, 15 years that I've been here. They're JIS screws on terminal block.
oh yeah.
Don't use a Phillips tip and a drill driver to take those JIS screws out, or you will be somewhere looking for screws or terminal block for that system because you will strip it out at some point.
Terry's right. If you use a Phillips head screwdriver, it is very, very easy to round those heads out and strip them. And yeah, then you're up a creek a little bit. So yeah, if you don't have a JIS, Japanese industrial screwdriver, get one.
And if you continue to use a Phillips and a drill driver, you could invest in a screw extractor kit, and you can go there and you can take the screws down to your local fastener store and buy yourself a whole bunch of those little bitty metric screws to replace in your terminal blocks that you stripped out. So heed our advice. Those things are tight. Use a JIS screwdriver. We've been preaching that for years now. So please take our advice.
Yeah. Yeah. I own a couple of motorcycles and I found that almost all the screws on those motorcycles are actually JIS. And so when I started using the JIS screwdriver on there, I was like, wow, they actually fit and I'm not stripping out all the screws on my bike. So it was, yeah, it's actually a better screw. It holds on as, if they're not worn out, you can take a JIS screw and a JIS screwdriver for those of you that are seeing on video and you stick them together. They don't have to be magnetic, but you can hold it sideways, upside down. That screw's not going to fall off. It fits on there nice and snug. So yeah, I wish everything
So
would
I
go to
know,
that.
so I know today's episode maybe not be the most exciting, right? But certainly I know we had a training recently in Boston with a bunch of contractors, and our producer was sending us messages from that training facility saying, "Hey, 5 wire is perfect time," and there's a lot of questions about it, and I think you're going to get a good, get good feedback. So hopefully today's episode may be a little shorter than normal. I don't know how much longer we can talk about 5 wire, but hopefully you picked up that it's really 3 wires outdoor to indoor. That's easy. That doesn't change. Good news there is now there's no more communication on those 3. And then 2 to communicate from outdoor to indoor to pick up the speed of communication so that we can shut down systems if there's a leak determined and A2L refrigerants can be not mitigated or not released into the home or so that's the benefit. Would you tend to agree with that, Phillip?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I like to understand why. I don't always get to. I don't always understand it when they explain it to me, but I try to understand the whys behind most things. But yeah, I think that sums it up nicely. That reminded me of something that we probably should say more often is to the viewers and the listeners, we want to hear from you. This episode came up because there were some questions that just happened to get trickled down to us through our producer, part of our marketing team. But if you guys have a question or a topic or anything that you'd like us to explore and you're like, man, that'd be something cool to hear about, please leave us a comment. We do read the comments wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast at. Our marketing and social media team are watching those comments. So if you have something that you want to hear about, we are open to it, but beyond open, we're hungry for it. We sit down and brainstorm and go, okay, what do we want our next couple of episodes to be about? And, I think Terry and I come up with some decent ideas, but we'd love to hear from you guys, because that's really what matters, is what do you guys want to hear? We want to make this podcast what's relevant and interesting and helpful for you.
I could have said it better. So listen, I know we're going to get short on time here. So I want to take an opportunity again to say thank you for tuning in. For those of you that listen via or watch via whatever platform it is, send us your notes and comments. We'd love to see them, hear and read them, react to them, and present to them, right? Until then, from the LG Procast, I'm your co-host, Terry Frisenda. Thanks for listening, watching.
Thanks again. Bye.
This episode of the LG Pro Podcast was recorded in May 2025 by LG Electronics USA Inc., LG, and features a discussion between LG hosts Terry Frisenda and Phillip Kriegbaum